Chairwoman of the full committee, and Ms. Ros-Lehtinen from Florida for her opening statement for as long as she wants.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for your dedication to freedom and democracy and for calling this important and timely hearing. Let me be clear. Cuba poses a clear and present danger to the United States. The Castro regime undermines our national security at every turn and reinforces instability in the entire region by exporting their Cuban military and espionage apparatus across the region. The ALBA countries have secret security advisors who are Cuban nationals. Some ALBA countries even send diplomats overseas who are undercover Cuban agents. Cuba is an avowed enemy of the United States, and let me cite these bullet points just in the recent years that the Castro regime has done. Has killed American citizens in the Brothers to the Rescue shootdown 19 years ago this week, has worked with the Russians to try to reopen the Lourdes spy facility in Cuba, has allowed Russian spy ships to dock in Havana as recently as just a few days ago, was caught sending arms and military equipment last year to North Korea in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. The Castro regime is hiding U.S. fugitives of law and has given asylum to Joanne Chesimard, who is considered a most wanted terrorist by our FBI. It has given safe haven to terrorist groups such as the FARC and the ETA, has sent military advisors to Venezuela who have caused the deaths of many Venezuelans due to the violence perpetrated by the thugs of Nicolás Maduro. The Castro regime has penetrated our own intelligence services with spies working for the Castro regime like Ana Belén Montes and Kendall Myers, had Cuban agents torture and beat American POWs at a prison camp in North Vietnam known as the Zoo, has sent troops to Angola in the 1970s and 80s to further destabilize the country and fight alongside leftist movements contrary to U.S. security interests, has ties with Iran, with Russia, with Syria, and the list goes on, Mr. Chairman. Yet all of these realities have been ignored by the Obama administration. Tomorrow, as we have pointed out, the Department of State will roll out the red carpet for officials from the Castro regime. The lead negotiator for the Castro regime is Josefina Vidal, who was a Cuban spy in the United States who was actually kicked out along with her husband from the U.S. due to their illicit espionage activities. And now she's negotiating for the Castro regime. I firmly believe that the President's concessions to the Castro brothers on December 17th poses a real national security threat. And here's why. It is well known that Cuba has one of the world's most advanced espionage apparatus, and that apparatus is aimed right at our country and here very much active in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We know that Cuba has had spies on the Hill and in many U.S. government agencies, so the President's new policies will provide an injection of new money to the regime, millions of dollars. And this new money will go straight into the pockets of the Castro brothers and the Cuban military, which owns and operates the tourist industry in Cuba. With this new infusion of capital, the Cubans will be able to provide more resources toward their espionage activities directed at us. And what will they do with the intelligence that they gather? They will sell it to our enemies, to the highest bidder on the black market. These are just some of the reasons, Mr. Chairman, of why Cuba does pose a national security threat to the U.S. and why it should remain on the state sponsor of terrorism list. The White House must stop putting politics ahead of our national security. On July 3rd, 1961, President Eisenhower terminated diplomatic relations with Cuba after the Cuban regime decided to expel several United States personnel from Havana. President Eisenhower responded by stating, and I quote, "This calculated action on the part of the Castro government is only the latest of a long series of harassments, baseless accusations, and vilification." Eisenhower continued, "There is a limit to what the United States in self-respect can endure. That limit has now been reached. Meanwhile, our sympathy goes out to the people of Cuba now suffering under the yoke of a dictator," end quote. President Obama should learn from history that negotiating with the Castro regime is a failed endeavor. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter addressed to President Obama, signed by the mayors of the city of Miami, Coral Gables, and Doral, expressing their opposition to the December 17th accord.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.